If you're curious and you care about where you live, if you can speak or write, well, being a reporter might be a good job for you to consider. Why? Well, news reporters are, for the most part, regular people just like you and just like Jessica Andrews. She's a veteran reporter who covers stories along the Northern California and Southern Oregon coast.
My favorite thing, I love listening to people tell me stories. I always have, ever since I was a kid. I was read to as a kid. I read a lot when I was a kid. And I think that that sitting down and talking to people and asking them questions and asking them why they do what they do, I think is just an extension of that.
Asking questions will drive every single story you report on. That means your reporting will answer at least one of the following questions: who, what, when, where, why, or how.
I find that why and how are probably the more important questions out of those 5 W's and the H. For me, at least, they're often the hardest questions to ask. It's easy for someone to tell you where and when and what happened, but if you ask somebody to explain the reasoning behind a decision they made, they would have to be able to explain to me why they felt the way the decisions they made was the best decision that they could made, and if they could have done something differently, what would it have been and why?
And that's where your reporting comes in. Part of your job is to put content into context, to explain to your readers, listeners, or viewers why a particular piece of information is important to them and why they should pay attention.
If there's an issue that comes up that affects their children, do they need to go pick their child up? Do they need to go to a school board meeting? And do they have any concerns that they want to bring to the attention of the Board of Trustees, for example? And they need to be able to trust that I know what I'm talking about, number one, and number two, that I am reporting the facts, that what I am reporting is truthful, and that I'm honest.
Whether you work in print or broadcast, you'll either be a general assignment or a beat reporter. General assignment reporters cover pretty much any kind of news, but a beat reporter is a specialist. Sports, crime, and health are all examples of beats. But whether you're a beat or a general assignment reporter, your job means getting information. And that usually means talking to someone involved in whatever story you're covering. That person is known as a source. And good reporters create and maintain good relationships with a variety of sources.
One of the things that my mom told me a long time ago when I was first starting out is that people giving me their time and people talking to me is a gift.
So when you schedule an interview, remember that you are being given the gift of someone's time. And keep in mind, you should always be professional. That means looking clean and neat, using polite language, and showing up on time. And you can see what that looks like right now. Reporter Jessica Andrews is interviewing Brookings, Oregon City Manager Tim Rundle. And notice, they're just basically having a conversation.
When I go in to interview somebody, I want to make sure that they are comfortable with me. So I just kind of get them to talk about themselves and some of the things that they're excited about and proud of for a little bit before I start asking the harder questions, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. I want them to open up to me. If I go in, if I shove a recorder in their face or my notepad in their face, they're gonna shut down. They're not gonna want to tell me anything.
So conducting an interview is all about having a conversation, and yes, you should probably have an idea of what kinds of questions to ask, but more important than a list of questions is your ability to listen. Oftentimes, you'll hear something that may be surprising or unexpected.
That's exactly why it's important to be a good listener, because you have to ask the follow-up question, number one, whatever that question may be, and often the follow-up question is why?
The last question you should always ask every person you talk to is there anything else you'd like to say? A lot of times you'll learn something new, so make it a point to end every interview with that one last question. Brookings City Manager Tim Rundle has been asked that question a lot. He's worked in government for years, has been interviewed countless times. Part of his job, of course, is to be the face of the city. Now, as city manager, Tim Rundle is an important source of information for reporters, but sometimes a source can't answer your questions. Maybe it's because of legal reasons or because they themselves don't have all the facts yet. Rundle says that was the case a few years ago when he dealt with a young reporter.
So she just showed up in my office one day and my front desk, and I walked in, And I forgot what, Brittany was her first name. And I said, Brittany, I told you. She goes, and so she had her clipboard like this, and then she had her phone like this, and she goes, listen, all my audio, all my video stuff is out in the van. Can I just talk to you for a second? And I said, well, listen. Then we start talking, and then I looked down, and she had her like doing this.
Was she recording?
I said, are you recording me right now? And she goes, yeah, it's not illegal because Oklahoma is a one-party state. And I said, you know what else is not illegal? And she goes, what? And I said, for me to walk away from you right now. And I just turned around and I walked away. And then I immediately called her boss. And I said, is that how you teach your reporters to go into office and say, I don't have any audio or video, let's just you and I talk, and I'm being recorded while she's doing that? That's highly unethical.
You never, ever want anyone to call you unethical. Honesty and truth are the backbone of reporting. What's more, that reporter did something else you should never do. She burned a source.
I've worked with a lot of small market reporters from small TV stations.
Yeah.
All of them are trying to get that story to put in their reel so they can I busted this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I was like, that's not how it works. You have to build trust with your folks.
Yeah.
Because guess what? I would do interviews with her, but very business only kind of a deal.
Trust is the cornerstone of every relationship you have as a reporter. Like Rundle just said, he wasn't going out of his way to help that reporter who lied to him. If you're not trusted, your sources will be reluctant to talk to you, and you might not have access to the information you need for your story.
Trust is important because it's the cornerstone of this profession, I think. Your source, the people that you talk to have to trust you, have to be able to, because they're telling you some things that is very personal often. Maybe they're going through a difficult time. They could be, if they tell you something that is controversial, they could be potentially damaging their career, their lives. They could, in some cases, wind up in jail. I have to be able to convince them that talking with me is worth it, that I'm going to be competent enough to treat the information they give me with respect and with care, being careful about how I use the information they give me. I'm not out to get anybody. That is not my job. And I don't think that should be any reporter's job. Our profession isn't to be used as a weapon. It's to inform members of the public. It's to inform people about what is happening in their community. If they're in any kind of danger, if it's a public safety issue.
You're going to report on public safety issues and on issues that affect people you know. Being a news reporter is a responsibility. Your neighbors, your family, the folks you went to high school with, the people who work at the pharmacy and the grocery store, they're all depending on you to tell them what happened. So that's why you cultivate relationships with government officials like Tim Rundle, so you can call them and get the scoop on whatever's making news. But remember, not everyone will be a solid or reliable source, so never take what someone says as the truth just because they said it, especially if it sounds or feels untrue or unlikely. Check them and their statements out. Now, Jessica Andrews says that's all part of reporting, knowing whether your source is reliable or not.
I take the person's history into account. Have they been honest before? What do I know about them? Do they have an axe to grind? Do they have an agenda? What is that agenda? If they do have an agenda, what does the reader need to know? What's the most important thing that the reader needs to know? And have I done my own research? Is what I'm being told in line with what I have read, what other information I have gathered? And if it's not in line with that, why isn't it? why doesn't that particular piece of information jive with what else I've gathered?
The bottom line is whether you're covering a government meeting or a traffic accident, your job is to give readers, listeners, or viewers good, clean, unbiased facts. Now, I'm going to say that again so you really hear it, because this is the most important part of reporting. What you think or feel doesn't matter. Remember, your job is to report facts, not to gossip, not to make a judgment, to report the facts. Your opinion isn't part of the story, so an unbreakable rule of good reporting is to keep yourself out of the story, period. You don't ever insert your opinion. Instead, attribute. Let others speak through your reporting.
Because you're being honest with the reader. You're saying where you got the information from. You're saying that you're telling the reader this is where the information came from. You're letting the reader know that you didn't just make it up. And you're also, you're also letting the reader know if it's an official source, say if it's like the police chief or something, this is information that may have an impact on their life, and they may need to act on it. If you're writing a criminal article, for example, like somebody stole something, for example, you can't just print Mary Wilson's opinion on the street that this person did it, and that's a quote that you should include, because number one, you don't know if that person did it. She doesn't know if that person did it. You could find yourself in a libel suit for getting the answer, getting it wrong, basically.
Reporting the news means taking the time to get it right, and that's going to mean doing some research. You're going to have to know and trust your sources, conduct interviews, and when all that's done, you can finally write your story, and that means finding your lead. Because whether you're a print or a broadcast reporter, your lead line is the first line of your report, and it should be provocative. You want to tease your readers, your listeners, or your viewers into wanting to learn more.
A lead line is the first sentence in your story. It's the most important. It's probably the most important part of your story because it is the hook that gets your reader to read it.
And something else to keep in mind when you write your lead is to always lead local or localize your lead.
Well, I generally always localize my lead. I want to make sure my reader knows that this is an issue that impacts them. This is an issue that impacts the community that they live in, their neighbors. And so they generally don't read the whole thing, so I want to make sure I get that up front.
As a reporter, your job is to take a whole lot of sometimes complicated information and help folks to understand why it's important to them.
The most important part of my job as a reporter is to gather as much information as I possibly can, as much factual information as I possibly can, and present it in a way that is meaningful to my readers, that will allow them to be better informed as to what's going on in their community, and to make good choices that are right for them when it comes time for them to go to the polling place or fill out a ballot, basically when it comes time for them to vote.
Reporting the news is an honorable profession sanctioned by the First Amendment of the Constitution. A free and open press is a foundational cornerstone of our democracy, and it's an important check on those who are in power or those who would like to be.
This is a service that you're doing your community. You're not going to get paid a lot of money doing this. And you shouldn't be in this field, in this career, because you want to get paid a lot of money. Some people are firefighters, some people are teachers, some people are nurses. I'm a reporter. My job is to let people know what is happening in their community.
And if you decide to become a news reporter, that'll be your job as well.